What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Star Wars Canon Connections, where we talk about things in the world of Star Wars canon that connect to the movies, whether it be books, comics, TV shows, what have you. Today we're going to be talking about the Star Wars Tarkin book written by James Luceno. I am Jacob Bartley. I'm your host. I'm joined by Keith Barnes. What's going on, Keith?
What's up, man? This is a great book. Can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, we've been waiting to talk about it. I recently just finished it. I started the new Leia one. Can't wait to talk about that in the future. But we're here to talk about Tarkin, and this is going to be a spoilers review. We're going to get into detail about it. Can't really talk about this book without getting into the nitty-gritty details. So let's first just give our general impression of the book. What do we think of it overall, Keith?
Oh, James Luceno. He's up there, one of the great Star Wars writers. He was big in the old canon of the legends, as they call it now. And yeah, you can tell he loves his character. He wrote what was it? The Rogue One book, Catalyst.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I love Catalyst.
I love Catalyst. And Tarkin was very well done in that book. I actually read that before I read this, so you can tell he's got a real good lock on the character of Tarkin.
Oh, for sure, that's his dude. I really liked this book. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but I really enjoyed it. The details, the things that I love. Like, we'll get into my specifics, but overall, I'm very satisfied with this book. There's moments in this book where I'm like, oh my goodness, like, am I really listening to this right now? Like, just such great moments. But overall, I think it's a really good book. I think it's one that you definitely should pick up if you're a Star Wars fan. Absolutely. All right, so let's get into some of the details. So basically, let me set this up a little bit. So the main timeline is before Rogue One and before A New Hope, obviously. Yeah. It jumps around to different time eras within Tarkin's life. Yeah. When he's a child, when he's like a young student, when he meets Palpatine, stuff like that. So it jumps around, but the main timeline is closer to Rogue One and A New Hope.
8 years after the end of the war, end of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, so it's in between, obviously, Revenge of the Sith, and so it might be even closer to Revenge of the Sith, probably, right?
There's some parts during that time, but I think it starts off in the middle.
Like when they're on their mission, it's probably somewhere in the middle.
Because it starts off, he's overseeing the construction of the hyperdrive.
So it's
of the Death Star.
It's closer to New Hope. It's like right in the middle, I would think. But so when this book first started, I remember I messaged you guys. I was like, man, this is a little bit boring, and it was just like the first couple chapters, and it was just so much details, like so many minor details, and like showing Tarkin's strategy as like a military leader and stuff like that. And I enjoy that stuff, but it was like, I hope the whole book isn't like this. And then like chapter 3 or 4, it went to when he's a child and with his relationship with his parents and the training that he went through as a kid. Once that stuff got going, then I was like, whoa, this book is awesome. So what are some stuff in the beginning of the book that you really enjoyed?
Well, I'm with you. The very first chapter starts off where he's just kind of like him and this one droid are trying to figure out the uniform.
Oh yeah, I know.
And there's a bunch of pages in this chapter where he's like,
and I get what they were trying to do, like how precise Tarkin is about every little detail about what he wears and everything. I understand that, but it was like, I hope the whole book isn't like this all the way through.
Yeah, and you figure that out later on in the book.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, this is just showing just how he is. But it's a little, there's an attack on wherever he is. It seems like, I guess they talk about how so he's overseeing. I guess they're building the hyperdrive components for the Death Star.
Oh yeah.
And it gets attacked or whatever, and he's kind of like, wait a minute, something's not right. And you can, like you said, everything where he's the way he just figures out things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's very well done.
He's a very strategic mind for sure. Yeah, so going back to like that dinner scene with his parents, like you understand why he is the way he is. I forget the name of his home planet. Do you have it off the top of your head? Iriadu. So the way they operate on that world, and the Tarkins are like the leaders of the world, and his family is like they love him, but the way they operate is different. Like, they're throwing him out in like this jungle environment to go train where he can die any moment.
It sounds like the Australian outback. That's what I kept.
Yeah, something like that. And it's like, now you kind of understand why Tarkin is so cold. Like the way he is, like he's able to shield his emotions, the emotions that he does have, and you kind of understand that from the world that he comes from and how.
It's very harsh.
If you just watch A New Hope, you think that he's just a frail old man, like he's a arrogant, stubborn military leader old man. That's it. But reading this novel and learning the stuff you learn in this novel, that's not all he is at all. He's so much more than that. Like, even at that age, and we'll get into details why, but he could probably whoop somebody's butt, like, fairly easily. Like, because we learn things in this novel, and I have notes about his reputation, and we'll probably get into that in a second, but I just love the setting of his home world and where he came from. It really explains a lot about him, for sure.
Yeah, a lot about, they taught him a lot about order, you know, and the way that the order of things and the way you have to maintain your place in that order constantly, and that's, I think, one of the lessons they wanted him to learn, and throwing him out into this wilderness to survive is like, there are people who are going to be constantly coming after you. You have to figure out how to stay ahead of them, and boy, he does that, and he does that you mentioned his reputation. He earns that very early, and there's a part we're going to talk about.
We can get into his reputation. So there's like a whole part of the book. It's like for a couple pages or so where they're explaining his reputation, like what people know about him. And a couple things that I took away from that is that he defeated a Wookiee in one-on-one combat. Yeah. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. Like, a Wookiee. Yeah. Like, imagine Chewbacca and Tarkin fighting. You would never imagine. Right. But he's so trained, and he's probably a great fighter, so he was able to do that. I mean, they don't explain how that happened, but they just say that it did happen, and that's crazy to me. It's like, wow, that makes Tarkin more intimidating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then they also say that, or one other detail, that he went into wild space. He went on an adventure in wild space. Yeah. They mentioned that. I'm like, what? I'm so obsessed with wild space because it's mentioned in the Aftermath trilogy. Yeah. And
Thrawn as well.
Thrawn goes into wild space. Mm-hmm. And then also this Tarkin has been there. Yeah. And it's like, and I have theories about The Last Jedi and the new trilogy with wild space and stuff like that. So I am so curious. I want to see it on the big screen or maybe in an animated show or something like that. I'm so curious about that. But do you remember anything about Tarkin's reputation that stood out to you from the book?
All right, well, one of my favorite things that happened in this, I can't remember which, there's a whole chapter about, I think when he was around 17 or 18 and he's working for his family. His family owns this, they started this kind of their own security force. Oh, yeah. Because, you know, they're an Outer Rim world and they can't get all the help from the core worlds, from the Republic that they need. So they decided to start their own security force, and he goes and is like interning or something there. And there's this pirate queen. There's this space pirate queen. Oh yeah,
I remember that.
Hijacking a bunch of the shipments of whatever they mine from his planet, and no one can figure out how to stop her or how to catch her because it seems like it's really random. And he just goes in there and it's like, oh, listen, guys, I can figure this out or whatever, kid. Yeah, sure, go ahead, see if you can figure it out. And he sits down and said it takes him like 2 or 3 weeks, and he got it. He figures out the pattern that she's using.
Wow, yeah.
And
I remember that.
Yeah, so they set it up where they're able to catch her, and she was this infamous pirate queen. I guess she was.
I remember that.
And they catch her and her team, and they put them in one of the shipping containers, and he sends them to the sun.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And broadcast it on the hologram for everyone to see.
Tarkin is
to hear them basically being cooked alive.
Like, it's crazy. It's like, it's hard. Like, is Tarkin a bad person? Parts of me want to say no.
Right.
But parts of me is like, he's so cruel. Like, he doesn't care, you know? Terrible. But it's like, he won't kill innocent people. You know what I mean?
Well, and he did that to send a message to all the other pirates in the sector. Like,
make an example.
Right. Don't mess with us.
And that's the thing, like, in this world, in the setting of Star Wars and how politics and power are everything, I don't think Tarkin's a bad person because you have to make those type of decisions. In our Earth, in our world, we probably consider him a bad person. Yeah. But what you have to do in that world to survive, I don't think he is. Because like I said, he doesn't ever want to... I mean, he blew up Alderaan. I'd probably take that back, actually. But, you know, for the most part, he's not just like, oh, see a little kid on the corner, just slaughter him. You know, it's not like that. Yeah. And also, Alderaan was to set an example to worlds who were threatening the Empire. So it's kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. Something that I absolutely loved was the flashbacks to when he first met Palpatine, and how Palpatine recruited him into going into politics and stuff like that. Because if I'm not mistaken, Tarkin was going to become a pilot, right?
Yeah, because he wasn't interested in politics.
Yeah, at all. And he was a great pilot, and he that's where he was going. He's going to student to become a pilot, and then he encountered, and Palpatine kind of knows about this young kid, and Palpatine like recruits him and gets in him young, and we all know how Palpatine works. He manipulates people, just like he manipulated Anakin. He kind of manipulated Tarkin. It wasn't as difficult to manipulate Tarkin, but he kind of molded him into what he wanted him to be, and it leads to Tarkin becoming like the third-hand man of the Empire eventually.
Well, they both figured out about each other that they both appreciate and respect the way they go about things.
Exactly.
And they're both kind of on the same page.
Oh,
in
for
the way
sure.
In the way they want to handle
like politically, like Palpatine as a politician was very similar to like Tarkin as a military
leader,
like politician. So they really worked well together, you know.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. Some of those flashbacks, and then also his interactions with Dooku and stuff like that, and then
that was interesting.
Yeah, and then the Clone Wars stuff. I remember he's in the Clone Wars TV show for a few episodes. But I just love they kind of touched on everything, like every era of Tarkin's life, at least a little bit.
The Dooku stuff was really interesting. Actually, was just kind of that's what I was rereading. Setting up because the way Dooku's talking to him, like, you should join our side.
Yeah.
But then and then Tarkin's like, well, there's something weird about the way something's off because it seems like there's something happening behind the scenes that either you don't know about or you're not telling me, and nobody else knows. And the way Dooku's talking to him about joining the Separatist movement, because his world, I guess, was the last one in the Outer Rim to not join the Separatist movement. And so Dooku's like, well, I just want to make sure that when this is over,
that we both end up on the same side.
We might all be on the same side. And Tarkin's like, how? How would that be possible?
And they hint that Tarkin kind of knows what's going on, that there's some type of conspiracy going on. Because basically, we all know the Emperor Palpatine was manipulating the whole thing.
And he clearly sent Dooku there to test him.
Oh, definitely, for sure.
I don't necessarily say that, but we figured
that out. And here's the thing with me is like, this reminded me of something I was going to bring up anyway, is Tarkin is like one of the smartest guys around, because like he knew something was up with the Separatist movement and the Republic.
Yeah.
He knows that Vader is Anakin.
I love how he figured that out.
I love that, because
he figured everything
he's
out.
not an idiot, because he spends more time with Vader than most people did when Vader was Vader, you know? So that all gives him more opportunity to figure it out.
Yeah.
But he worked with Anakin in the Clone Wars. So he knows how Anakin is, and then the way, like right away, once they get into Vader, they let you know that Tarkin has his suspicions that Vader is Anakin.
Just the way he fights.
And then, I forget exactly how, but later on in the book, something that Vader says or does confirms that Tarkin knows that he's Anakin.
I think that Vader was, the way, I was thinking once he was watching him fight, and he figured out, that reminds me of that Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker.
Or it was a decision he made.
Something that he said. Yeah, you're right. And then, and the way he is with the Emperor, he's just watching him. He's like that. I think he's just his suspicion.
And he knows that Palpatine was fond of Anakin back then. Like, and then so I love that, because nobody really knows. Like Vader just kind of comes out of nowhere according to everybody else. But and Tarkin even says it lines up perfectly. Like, Anakin died at one of the last battles. He died at one of the last battles of the Clone Wars, and then
all of a sudden this guy shows up.
Right when the Republic goes down and the Empire starts, Vader's there. Right after the end of the Clone Wars, like it kind of
people are like
it kind of matches up perfectly, and I love that Tarkin was able to figure that out. Like, it was really cool.
And I love from that he figures out, because he doesn't really know who or what Palpatine really was. And I love
and he says that they're Sith Lords.
Yeah,
they must. But he's like, it's funny because it's like they're probably Sith Lords. Yeah. Like the way his thought process is.
And then he's just like, well, no wonder the Jedi were trying to take him out.
Oh, exactly.
That's their mortal enemy for 1,000 years, and now they're ruling the galaxy.
So probably my favorite part of this book is the way that Vader and Tarkin interact and how they get to know each other.
I love that.
Which builds their respect for each other, and then. Leading to probably my favorite moment of the book is when Tarkin explains to Vader his trials on Eriadu and why he named the ship the Kyrian Spike. That was amazing, because for multiple reasons, like the way Tarkin like got up on that hill and killed those creatures and like got away from them was awesome, but also to hear Vader in a conversation.
Yeah.
Like He was actually having like a full-on conversation with Tarkin.
Tarkin was surprised because for most of the book he noticed because Tarkin he even said he wanted to earn Vader's favor and respect.
And he said it's hard to have a conversation with him because of the mask.
Because of his mask, and then he just answers just quickly yes, no, and then walks away.
At a point he said he could tell that he was paying attention.
He was listening. He turned at him. He was talking. He would stop and turn and look at Vader.
And he kept asking questions like elaborate.
So he's okay. I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, I love that because. Everybody wants to keep Darth Vader mysterious, and so do I, but it was really cool because he's still Anakin under there. So he doesn't have much human connection anymore. So I feel like him and Tarkin kind of made this bond in a way in this book. And which for me, it makes complete sense when you watch A New Hope. Yeah. Because I'm like, all right, Tarkin is not above Vader. They're in the Empire. They're kind of like equals in a way in Palpatine's eyes. So when Vader's choking that dude out in the beginning of New Hope and Tarkin tells him to stop, I'm like, why would Vader, before reading this book, why would Vader listen to him? Wouldn't Vader just be like, do whatever he wants? Yeah. But it makes complete sense now. And that's the biggest thing I took away from this book is their relationship and their respect for each other, for sure. Exactly. Yeah, and one more detail that I remember is, so they go to Palpatine a lot, like Palpatine, and it all ties into what's going on in this book, but one thing that really stood out to me is that Palpatine has Plagueis' old droid. Isn't that crazy? Yes. So it's like Plagueis, I don't know how long Plagueis lived for, but Plagueis had this droid for a long time, and then Palpatine went on and took it over. That's crazy. And there was a couple details about Plagueis too in the book.
Yes, and the way that apparently in the old, because Palpatine took over the old Jedi Temple and made it his headquarters or whatever. Apparently, way down deep in the bottom of this temple, in the middle spire, apparently there was an old Sith shrine or something down there that the Jedi had either had sealed up, either they didn't know about it or they just sealed it up in the hopes that whatever was down there wouldn't come out.
Yeah.
And the book explained that the powerful, whatever dark side forces were down there, seeped up all the way through into the Jedi Temple and into their halls and into their main room, and that's kind of what helped cloud them from being able to detect the return of the Sith.
That's crazy. Yeah, there's so many details in this book. Like I said before, narrative-wise and what's going on in the modern time in this book, I didn't love it. Like the mission that they're on, see, we didn't even talk about it.
Yeah,
Like they're chasing the Kyrian Spike.
Someone hijacked his ship.
Yeah. So that stuff I didn't really care about. Like I wasn't worried like, oh, they're not gonna get the ship back. Yeah. But just all the details surrounding it and learning about Tarkin and his life and how throughout all these different time eras, like the influence he had and the influence Palpatine had on him, all that stuff I loved for sure.
Yeah, it was good. But I did like that story because it really kind of reminded me. It was kind of like the Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, in a way, it wasn't terrible. I just didn't care about it as much as I did the other parts of the book.
Well, if it had been written from their point of view, because these guys are it's basically the rebellion, one of the early seeds of rebellion, and they're trying to, because that's what they're trying to do. They hijacked Tarkin's ship. It's this really high-tech, advanced stealth ship, and they're going around blowing up different Imperial facilities and whatever, and broadcasting it on the internet, on the Star Wars internet. And trying to basically spark a rebellion against the Empire. And the book is basically about Tarkin and Vader trying to get it back, and that was very well done. And if they had been told from their point of view, because they weren't, they were doing
if it was about that crew and then Vader and Tarkin are chasing them,
it would have been interesting. That I would have rooted for them, but I'm rooting for Tarkin to catch these guys. It's really weird the way that happened. But
so how did you think that storyline wrapped up with the leader of that crew ending up on Ariadu and then getting stuck in the trap and stuff like that?
That was crazy. Well, it turns out, first, before I get to that, did it seem like the Emperor kind of set that whole thing up?
I wouldn't be surprised. The Emperor sets everything
up. He knew that whole thing was happening. He really just did the whole thing just to get Tarkin and Vader to bond, to work together.
Have you read Lords of the Sith?
I have.
So there's other things where Palpatine probably was behind that whole storyline too. So I think he's always testing everybody,
Yeah. And I thought that was interesting, but no, I like that the way it ended with this guy. I guess this guy used to work for Tarkin. He was part of the Death Star project, and Tarkin blew up a moon with a bunch of separatists and Republic leaders on it, and but I guess this guy's crew was part of it. And the only reason Tarkin, I guess he did it because he didn't want to have to separate out Republic and Separatists. So just destroy them all. And this guy was basically, they called him Dissenter, and he was just upset about it and wanted revenge. And it was interesting the way Tarkin. First, he fell into that the carrion spike, what it actually is. He trapped him into that hole and was like, "All right, well, if you can get out of here, here's the blaster."
Exactly, and he let him. And
let the blaster
I forgot,
his
uncle was there.
His uncle was there,
and he was like, "What if he gets out? Do you want me to kill him?" And he's like, "No, let him go." He's like, "It'll keep me on my feet."
Knowing he's at large will keep me on my toes.
That's awesome.
Well, first of all, he's not going to get out, but if he does, then I'll be ready.
And he was injured too. There's no way he's getting out. And the creatures on the planet, there's no way he's surviving that. But you never know if he did. Then that's crazy how Tarkin thinks,
Right.
Also, so one more thing before we wrap this up. So how Tarkin got the Grand Moff title and how Palpatine created that title for him, because they never had a Grand Moff. They had a bunch of Moffs. I forgot how many 20. They said. 20 Moffs. He gives Tarkin the title of Grand Moff, and once he gets that title, he becomes this big celebrity in the galaxy. Everybody wants to interview him. He's traveling to different planets. It's kind of like a press tour in a way for his title. I love that, because that is when Tarkin gets elevated to it's Palpatine, Vader, Tarkin. Those are the three heads of the Empire, and that's it.
He becomes the face of the Empire. Which is kind of what
because Vader and Palpatine kind of stay in the shadows, and he becomes the face of the Empire. Yeah.
Well, it's mentioned. Another thing that was interesting is that they really get into what Palpatine, what his goals and what he wanted to do. Was he wanted Tarkin to be the face of the Empire, while he and Vader, because he can't, Palpatine can't. He can't, and he wants him and Vader to just get deep into the dark side of the Force. And try to reshape reality.
So basically, from the very beginning, when Palpatine met Tarkin, this probably was his plan all along. But and then imagine how much more important it is when they take Tarkin out in A New Hope. Like how big that is.
That was a big deal.
We don't really see like them talk about Tarkin in Empire Strikes Back, because we're just focusing on our main characters. But like in a galaxy-wide scope, that's huge.
That was a huge loss.
They basically took out one of the heads of the Empire.
Right. And their weapon.
Like the face of the Empire and the weapon. So these are what the books are doing. They're making the movies better. Like Catalyst made Rogue One better. I feel like this Tarkin book made A New Hope better for me in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, so that'll wrap up like all the details. So let's just give our general thoughts. Where does it rank among the Star Wars books for you? And
I love this book. In terms of this, like the overall canon, it's probably not necessarily that important. At least regarding maybe what the new trilogy and what's happening now. But like you said, it does enhance the original trilogy, and even the prequel trilogy a little bit. It does enhance those. So and it's a great character study for Tarkin if you're a fan of him, because we didn't get much of him. Unfortunately, George Lucas didn't have all of this in mind necessarily back then. But he's a great character, and it's too bad he's gone. I'd love to see more of him. Even CGI. We
could always see more of him, like in other canon stuff,
Absolutely.
Like animated shows and stuff like that.
Animated shows. He's in the Thrawn novel.
Let's see his wild space adventure. I want to see that.
Great book. I loved it.
Yeah, I really, really liked it. It's not in my top 5. I think I've done about 12 or 13 of the books so far. And I wouldn't even say it's in my top 8, but I really, really like it. Most of the books have been good. There's only been about 2 that I didn't like.
Yeah.
So this one is one of those that I really liked. I wouldn't say it's a must-read, but it almost is, because it's like you learn so much more about Tarkin and the original trilogy, and it makes everything so much better to me. Like it makes the Palpatine with Tarkin and the Vader, all of that makes it way much better. So I definitely recommend reading it for sure.
I will say you'll disagree. I like this book better than Lords of the Sith. Myself.
I know.
I know you guys
so Lords of the Sith is my second favorite book. It goes Bloodline, Lords of the Sith. Leia might challenge both of those books so far. We'll see how I end up liking that. All right, well, that's going to wrap up our spoiler review of Star Wars Tarkin, the book by James Luceno. Thank you for joining me, Keith. Let them know where they can find you online.
Thank you, man. I'm on Twitter at KeithBarnes79.
And I am Jacob Bartley. You can find me on Twitter at JacobBartley_. Please subscribe to Apocalypse Movies if you like all things movies, especially Star Wars. We have the Padawan podcast. We review all the books, most of the comics. We try to get it all out there for you. Thank you all for watching again. Until next time, take care.